Welcome to the Wraith YouTube channel. My name is Deke. Today I'm just going to be going over my UI and some of my add-ons. I've had several questions from the community about how I get my UI so clean and maybe could I share that UI, so I'm going to do that today. The first thing that I want to point out is that one of the reasons why this UI is so clean is because I actually play with a widescreen monitor. And in order to capture in OBS, my choices are to turn my widescreen monitor into a 1080 by 1920, which I don't want to do, or I can crop the actual video itself, and so you're seeing less of the width of the screen. And so what I'm able to do is hide a few of my UI elements on the sidebars, and I cut those off, and then I center my video in OBS, and so that looks much cleaner even than it actually is when I'm playing it. But even in this widescreen mode here, you can see that the only things that you're missing out on the sides are my details, my chat box, some small action bars and UI elements down at the bottom right hand corner, and then my mini map, and then just this little TomTom coordinates up there at the top. So those are the only things really that are on the sidebars. So we'll talk through a few things in this widescreen version, and then I'm going to go back to my cropped version. I'm going to enable my cursor in OBS, and also I'm going to make my cursor really large just so you can kind of follow my pointer as I'm pointing at certain things or describing certain things on the screen. So if you look at the text box down here, I actually have this add-on called Minimalist Chat. And what that does is it just cuts off some of the unnecessary elements of the chat box, and it allows you to move it even further on your screen. So you can see it's very, very clean and simple. Doesn't really change it that much, but it just makes it so that I can get it exactly where I want it and keep it nice and clean. The other thing on this left-hand side, obviously, is just details. So this has my damage meters and stuff like that. Occasionally, I will unlock that and drag it into the frame so that you can see that sometimes. I also have this macro made over here. You can see that I'm clicking the button of a macro that I made that is just /details space toggle. What that does is it just turns that window on and off. So if I just want to get it out of the UI and clean it up, I can just hit that macro and it does it. So that's something that I actually do quite a lot. I have all of my option and menu buttons scaled to as small as they will go. You can also individually scale down the raid and dungeon finder icon. So I have that scaled as small as it will go. And then just above that, there at the bottom right hand side, I have two action bars. Those action bars have things like my Hearthstone, my mounts, my switch flight style, my urban mining overloads, and some other like little trinkets and toys and things that I like to use. I also have my mounts over there, and those are keybound. So then I'm going through Narcissus a little bit here. You can see you can do photos. This is how I make my thumbnails. You can manipulate your character. You can do stances. You can even search for NPCs and put those in the frame. You can do some background features. You can darken the background. Another feature of Narcissus here is that you can scale up your dressing room window, which is really nice to have this really big, bold window so you can look at your different gear sets or whatever. One thing people might not quite be aware of is that when you go into edit mode and you click on any action bar that you have visible here, you can do a thing called quick keybind mode. If you push that mode, then when you hover over the buttons, you can just quickly keybind just like that. So you don't have to actually go into the keybinding and the options to do that on your action bars. It's pretty nice. Recently, I swapped over to a 8-button Logitech mouse, and one cool feature of that mouse is it allows me to bind certain keyboard keys to the mouse itself. So that way, when I was kind of teaching myself and learning the transitions of like what buttons I'm pushing for what skills, I still had the back of them being on the keyboard. So it was kind of nice. Something you definitely want when you're tanking. You don't want to be scrambling for looking for your cooldowns and stuff on your mouse and you forget where they are. So it's kind of a nice feature. Pretty much transitioned fully over to that now and feeling really good about using the mouse. And the way I'm moving my windows around is an add-on called BlizzMove. So as an example of something that I do with BlizzMove quite often is that when I go into a delve, I move the objective window in so that you guys can see it. So now we're back in our cropped mode. This is what my screen usually looks like to the viewer. So I have to move in this objective window. And as long as you have your snap to elements set up and you are following the way I have the buffs snapped up there, this will just snap to the edge of the buffs and it'll be kind of perfectly aligned with the right side of your screen. I also locked my tooltip to that bottom corner there. Like if you're looking at it in my perspective, it's right next to all of my little action bars there. And then right above that is where my loot window is. You can see it here, how it's laid out in the edit mode. You can see usually as long as I'm not in a 25 player group, my raid frames don't poke out of the left-hand side. And I haven't really made any videos that have more than a few people in my party at a time. And so typically that party bar you see is underneath my action bars down at the bottom. I just like to have things very, very tightly condensed so that I can actually just look at one location to see the things that I want, but generally I don't have to look at that stuff. Most of my skills, you know, I play by muscle memory, so I'm not having to look at my bars that often. I do have an add-on that I use to look at my shield block and ignore pain durations. That's called Shield Maid. And I have started to use a little bit of my own custom WeakAuras for Fury, just so I can take some of my buffs that show up on the top right and actually put them down over my bars just to see a couple of things that I want to see, like timers on Enrage and things like that popping up. It's a little bit harder to look up there at the buffs. You can see here I'm showing the glider add-on, so that's the little circle down here that's showing my speed and your flight bars. I just really dislike the Blizzard basic UI bar for that. And, you know, obviously I like to Alt-Z when I'm flying around and stuff, just to get rid of all the UI elements. I have another add-on called phisHideUI, which when you hit Alt-Z, that also turns off like people's chat bubbles and NPC names and things like that, stuff that actually persists through Alt-Z. Just to quickly run through all the actual add-ons I'm using, I have DBM, obviously, with all of its little extra components installed. I have Auctionator. This is what I use for my auction house stuff. BlizzMove is the thing I'm moving the windows around with. I have an add-on there called Better Fishing that turns fishing into one button. I'm running details. Dialogue UI is the thing that makes my quest windows so attractive. Glider, which we were just looking at. Gather Maid is just storing nodes on my map to show me where herbs and mines are. HandyNotes, obviously you can find treasures. Name to chat is just one that in guild chat, it allows me to have my main character's name show up when I chat as an alt. phisHideUI is the one that is allowing me to, when I hit Alt-Z, to hide all of the extra stuff. Speedy AutoLoot just immediately loots all your stuff. You don't see any kind of loot window. This actually makes things a lot faster. TomTom I use for specific things. If I'm looking up quests and trying to hunt for certain things, I use TomTom. And then I do have WeakAuras installed just to use a few custom WeakAuras. Dialogue UI is one that I get a lot of questions about, and it is a very pretty add-on made by the same guy that makes Narcissus. And then the other one that I get a lot of questions about is NameplateSCT, and that's the one that kind of alters my scrolling combat text and shows little icons for the skills doing specific damage. And then this Better Fishing add-on basically just makes it so that you can bind fishing to one button. So you push the button to throw out the line, you push the same button to catch the fish. You don't have to click on your bobber anymore. It's amazing. It's like the only way I will actually fish in this game. I found a nice balance of my character and target windows and my action bars down at the bottom. I just don't like stuff to be in my face when I'm playing. I know a lot of people use WeakAuras and they just have all this stuff flashing around their character. I just don't really like that. So I try to get rid of some of that kind of stuff. I rely a bit more on auditory direction, so things like DBM or bigwigs, things that are sound related, I do better with as far as warnings and moving out of things. A couple of macros. Obviously, I've got the Mouseover Heroic Leap macro here. Making Mouseover macros is something every WoW player should know how to do. So here I'm just showing the details toggle macro that I was talking about earlier. It toggles the detail. Here's the Heroic Leap Mouseover macro. You can see you could just put your mouse somewhere, and then when you click the button, your character goes to where you click it when you leap. I have some add-ons like this, DBM Pull 8. I have a Ready Check macro. World marker macros, so they're easy to grab. These are macros that put icons on people's heads. /TM space the number, whichever number of the icon is. So skull, for instance, is 8. I have some macros that I tie into things like big cooldowns, like Avatar. You can see here when I'm in Fury, I pop Recklessness and use Trinket 13. So if you do /use space 13, that's Trinket 13. If you change that number to 14, it will use the other Trinket slot. You can also put them both in there. Here's a big macro for Last Stand where I've got Gift of the Naru, my Potion, my Healthstone, and it clicks Ignore Pain. Here's a charge macro. Cancel Bladestorm is always a good one to put in front of your macros if you're in a spec that's using Bladestorm, but this will harm, charge a harmful target, or help intervene a helpful target. So if you're running intervene, you can have that on one button, which is nice. And you can see here I just have like my Pummel and my Stormbolt both have cancel or a Bladestorm on them so that I can get out of Bladestorm and interrupt if I need to. And then this is like a focus version of that same macro, so this will cast on my focus target my stun. Really good for PvP, but you can use it in delves as well. Here's a macro that just changes my stance, so defensive or battle stance. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I think I've covered most of the stuff about the UI. Again, if you have questions, leave them and I'll get back to you for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. We've passed 1,800 subs, which is really nice. We're trying to get to that 2K mark, so if you're watching the video and you have not subscribed and you're enjoying my delve content or any of my other videos, please subscribe. That'll really help the channel quite a bit. And I look forward to talking to you guys all in the future, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.